I have many deals that are very appreciation focused, and I'm doubling my money every 3 to 5 years, and it's phenomenal, and it's going to grow a lot of wealth, and I think it's a great strategy. And yet, on the other side, moving more money into income allows me to have more optionality, and it's about understanding, from my perspective, where you're at and what your goals are. Welcome back to the Investor Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Pesavento, and today I have Bronson Hill in the studio today. How you doing today, Bronson?
I'm good, Steven. It's good to see you, man. It's always good to see you. And I love talking about mindset. I know we've been friends for a while and just love what you're creating here, man. So excited to add in any way I can, add some value to your listeners.
Yeah, it's really been cool to see your path and your journey grow, because for the listeners who aren't familiar with you, you were working in a W-2 job. You're working with another operator, putting together investors and bringing in cash and helping them grow and scale their business. And then you went out and did that same thing yourself. So in today's episode, I want to talk a lot about kind of your experience and path towards getting to that time freedom type place where you could truly fire yourself from your job and have the optionality to go and do what you're now doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people that I worked with in the medical field, I had, 10 years I worked in the medical field in medical device sales. I was making good money, over 200K a year. But the thing I didn't have, which is what a lot of people don't have, is that freedom of time. And so a lot of people talk about having financial freedom, but really we want freedom of time. And so I just tried to learn everything I could. And it literally led me on a path to learn about multifamily investing and syndication. And now we're doing all kinds of alternatives outside of real estate, even ATMs and car washes and oil and gas and other things. But really the goal, Warren Buffett says, is to learn how to make money while you sleep. Because if you don't, you're going to work until you die. Ironically, Warren's still working, but the principle is there to make work optional, so you can do what you love to do, not what you have to do, just to make ends meet.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to put your time and effort into work that you love and having the option to not ever have to do it if you don't want to. But before we get into all of that, let's start out on more of a personal note. If we're looking back at your life, what events or influences from your childhood shaped who you are today?
Yeah. So, quite a bit. I had, when I was growing up, we were pretty middle class. I would say we were kind of lower, maybe middle class. My dad was a college professor at a small school, but as a single dad, I mean, he had 4 kids. And so it's kind of unusual. I grew up with my dad. But the thing that was really interesting is that we grew up and we would go to garage sales, we go thrift store shopping. And I kind of learned this idea of like, oh, you could buy a brand new watch for $40, but you could find one at a garage sale for like $1. And sometimes they were the same. And so it's that idea of price is what you pay and value is what you get. And then also, fast forward a little bit to when I was a teenager, my brother had he had basically worked at doing paper routes when he was, 14, 15, 16. And then when he was 16, he was able to buy his own car. He'd saved $8,000 to be able to buy a $4,000 car. I saw that. I was like, wow, like I really want to be someone who can actually make money and what that looks like. And so I got a paper out, and what it did, it taught me every single day, no matter what happened, it was in the afternoons during the week, come rain, shine, snow, whatever. I was out there sometimes on a sled if it snowed in Seattle, and I would be pulling the sled, driving the bike, whatever I'd be doing to go get those newspapers to those people. And it taught me a lot of responsibility and also gave me some ability to see a cause and effect relationship with money. So those two things of really, understanding what value really is, how it's price is what you pay, value is what you get, as well as just learning a work ethic of, hey, if you go out and you make it happen, you can create anything you want. And so that was kind of some early experiences that really helped me with that.
I think it's such a valuable experience. I grew up broke, and the idea of getting a deal was always like the core value in our family. If you could get a deal on something, if you can negotiate something, like it feels so good at it. And it really plays well into investing because the same kind of principles can be true there. And it ends up leading to, a much better result, much better types of returns that get you exactly where you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, deals. I mean, I think a lot of us are deal junkies now, especially in the industry. But it's just an amazing thing that again, I quote Buffett a lot. But there's a great, even as a teenager, I found some of Buffett's stuff, and it's really spoken to me over the years. But he said, a lot of investing is like buying dollar bills for 40 cents, right? And a lot of people think well, if it's really a dollar bill, it wouldn't be there, right? But there are deals that are out there, and I know you guys are doing great deals as well in your business. And so we're looking for that. We're looking for those inefficient markets where, you can get a dollar for 40 cents, and it does exist, and that's what we love, right? And I think that's really amazing.
So tell me, you went down the path of becoming an author. You wrote a book called Fire Yourself. Such a simple concept, yet I know towards most of the people that I know who work in kind of a traditional job, they think, well, that's not really possible. I see other people doing it, but they must be making money off of selling me the idea of it. Even though I personally know that's not true, there's definitely those people out there. Tell me what this book's all about.
Yeah, so the book is, it's a compelling title, but it's just the idea of how do you make work optional? How do you allow yourself not to, have to go to work, but that you can fire yourself? Meaning, a lot of people we work with are business owners. They know, they've got kids going to college. Hey, if I sell this business, how do I make money? Like, what's the way? Because a lot of times Wall Street doesn't offer income, or if it does, it's very low income, and there's a lot of volatility there. And so through Main Street type of investments that you do, that I do, and businesses as well, there's all kinds of ways to generate cash flow. So as an investor, I used to feel, I asked this question, I've talked with over 1,500 investors one-on-one. We've raised over $40 million. And I always ask this question, Steven, I say, what's more important to you? Is it cash flow or is it appreciation? And a lot of people are kind of like, well, I don't know. I need a little bit of both, or, appreciation, whatever. But I have come to believe, like, with almost a passion that, like, I get offended when somebody says something different, that cash flow is just way, way superior. It's far superior to appreciation, because if you're going to make a lot of money someday, that's great. You can't leave your job today. You can't pay for expenses. If you have cash flow in your business, when I was able to replace my rat race number, which was not super high, was 60, 70,000 a year, through investment income, I was free. I didn't have to go to work anymore, right? And so that's the idea of firing yourself, is developing enough passive income in your investments where you actually you make work is optional. And if you do work, you're working the way you want to work and how you want to work. So I do think work is great. It's important, but to have to go to work, I mean, something like 70% of people are not engaged, or they don't like their jobs. I mean, to me, that's a tragedy. Like, life is too short not to do what we're here to do. And so I think those are a couple things about Fire Yourself that I really like, those concepts.
I think it's once you have an experience like this personally, when you hear Bronson or I or all these other people talk about their experience, that's just knowledge. But once you go and do it, you actually get to feel what that feels like, and you believe that it's true in your bones. For me, that was Airbnb. I was 23 years old and I was renting an apartment for $1,000 a month. And I started renting it full time on Airbnb, and I was making $3,000 a month profit every single month. And so, although $3,000 a month isn't going to retire you if you've got a family and things like this, but what it did was it gave me that experience to see, well, hey, it's possible for me to take an asset. This happened to be a rental, but that contract and the setup and the business behind it is an asset, and turn that into an income stream that I could then multiply and be able to start on that path. What was it for you, Bronson? What was that investment or strategy that kind of opened up that door to realizing that it's possible to step out of that W-2 life?
Yeah, so it actually started for me, I think, similar to a lot of people, where I had a single family house that I had bought as my first house. I bought it in my 20s. And I had ended up moving to another area. And so it was like, well, do I sell the house? Do I keep it? Decided to keep the house. And it became an investment that cash flowed. Initially, it was kind of a break even, but I did a lot of work on the house, so it started to cash flow more over time. Then I realized, man, I'm generating like $400 or $500 a month on this house. I was like, this is kind of nice. So I thought, like a lot of people, hey, maybe I'll get more of these houses. So I started buying single family houses in the Cleveland area, which anybody who's bought in Cleveland knows that there are some rough parts of Cleveland. And so I had at one time 4 or 5 houses, and I just realized, in that experience, it was a lot of work. It wasn't penciling like I wanted. But the first experience was buying that first house. And then over time, I had there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And for me, I have a cousin who had been doing multifamily for years and said, hey, this seems like a lot of work. Why don't you do multifamily? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I don't have the money. And that's where I learned about syndication. I learned about the ability to be passive in investing. A lot of people think that owning houses is passive, but I tell people, and in the book, I use this example, if you can't go from 2 houses or 3 houses to 30 houses. If you get 10x the size of what you're doing, it's not passive. You're basically just creating yourself another job. And so there's a huge advantage to be able to do a little bit of work on the front end to vet a team and vet a deal. But then once you invest, you literally receive that mailbox money, right? You're just getting that cash flow and you're not having to do the work for it. So I went from, having an investment that was, somewhat passive with a single family. Then I had a manager, was another estate, to trying to do more of it and realizing, gosh, this really is not scalable. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that, I want to do, we want to do real estate to become financially free, but it's not through single family typically, unless you've got something set up that will allow you to do that. So I just think, the bigger deals, sometimes they allow for people to be more passive in general.
Well, because they're so much more scalable, all that effort and energy is focused on one building, one asset versus spread out across all these individual buildings. And I mean, I know my background. I bought 200 single family houses in 2.5 years. And I'll tell you, it was not scalable. And that was the direct reason I went into multifamily, was because I realized it was dispersing focus over all these different individual properties that all had a very different repair requirements, layouts, designs, all these things. And so when you go bigger, it requires a bigger team, but it allows you to be able to bring other people into the table. So you started out doing single family. That was where you got the little taste of it. Today, you're working with a bunch of LPs. We have a similar experience where you're talking to folks, you're helping them be able to understand what this investment opportunity looks like and how it can actually set them up in the long term to be able to create the life they want to live. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see people who are looking to make this transition or who already have started making these investments? What are some of the biggest challenges that those people see when they get involved investing passively?
Yeah. So, as a passive investor, a lot of people, they are unfamiliar with investing, except unless it's a stock, or a lot of people that are wealthy have a money person. And Tony Robbins wrote this book called Money Master the Game, which is a really good book. But he basically pulls the curtain back on some of this and says, the average fee for a fund, like a mutual fund or having an investment manager, it's typically, they'll say it's 1.2%, but it's actually around 3.2%. So there's all these hidden fees that they don't actually have to legally disclose, things like administrative fee, cash drag fee, whatever. And so that brings you to 3.2%. And then if you have a Morgan Stanley or a big, fund manager that, like an investment advisor, they're typically taking another 1.5 to 2% on top of that. So it's typically around 5.5%, which is most of your returns. So this, investment becomes like a savings account. So for a lot of people, when they get started, it's just getting comfortable that this is not like brain surgery, right? Where you have to have like, years and years of education. It's just, getting into things that actually make sense for you. And a lot of people, and I can relate with this as well, is they don't want to make a mistake. So analysis paralysis is huge. I know you probably talk about it on the show as well. People will just look at deals. I mean, there are people going to meetups 5 years ago that I've seen that still haven't bought something yet. And I'm like, man, why are you even going to meetups? But I was that guy. For 6 years, I would just show up and I didn't really do anything. I had my one rental and I didn't really scale. I didn't really grow. And then something clicked and all of a sudden I was like, I actually have to do this. Like if I do it, it will actually change. So my belief is that life has this action bias, right? If you have two people, one person has incredible ideas on how they're going to get wealthy and the other person or some goal, the second one just starts taking action every day, every week, and just reflects and just kind of keeps doing it. The person taking action will always win. And so I think the biggest obstacle a lot of people have is just inaction, because everything feels weird until you've done it or you've known somebody that's done it. And a lot of people with the word syndication or Main Street investments or things that are outside of Wall Street, they just feel very different. So I think that's kind of the first thing, is just getting people comfortable with, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get into these projects and I'm responsible, in a way for, my decisions of choosing to invest or not.
Yeah, it really comes down to that decision. And that decision has to be, hey, this is where I'm at right now. I'm fearful of what's outside of what I know, but I have to make that decision and step out and have an experience. And if I can make multiple of those decisions and have multiple experiences, I'm going to increase the likelihood that one of those experiences is going to work out well, which is then going to give me the opportunity to build off of it. But even more importantly is deciding upfront that even when the experience doesn't go well, that it's the purpose isn't actually to make a profit initially. The purpose is to get into the game. And the purpose is to have an experience where you can learn something so that you can then have the confidence to keep doing it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's really well said, Stephen. I think it's, it's almost like when you have a workout that's like a way you've never worked out before. And you're like, man, I didn't even know I had a muscle there and it's hurting. It's like that kind of thing. And investing is like that, where it's like, it's working a muscle that's underused or you didn't know you had. And really, it's typically going to go one of three ways. Either the investment's going to go great, it's going to go okay, or it's not going to go well, regardless of how it goes. Most of the time it goes just fine. And you will learn. And I think the biggest investment we make really is in our own education. And so, if somebody has, $5 million, you don't put $5 million in one deal and pull, you put a small amount, you put 50K or 100K, put a small amount in, which for somebody has 5 million. And for some people, that's all their net worth. But if you're putting a smaller percentage of your net worth, you'll learn. And I think that's the thing that you'll be able to gather from, oh, okay, there were some signs here that this was going to go this way. And I would not invest with these guys again. Or yeah, this happened. And man, I really like this. These are things that I'm going to take. And I really, this was a great experience, right? So you're going to learn on both sides. And I think that's really how we learn. I mean, it's almost like, I don't pay attention a lot of times unless I'm invested in something, right? If I've invested time or money, and this is a way where you invest money, you're going to pay attention.
Yeah, I think the other mistake people make, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this, is that they make that investment, they take that action, and then a result happens. And because they don't have enough experience, or they haven't made enough of those bets over a long enough period of time, they start connecting the outcome to the wrong thing. Meaning, if things really go well, they connect, hey, I'm a genius, I picked the right person, they're a genius, they're doing the right thing. Or if things don't go well, they blame others, which may well be the people to blame. But once you have enough experience and you've done this for a long enough period of time and you've talked enough investors, you start recognizing there's a bunch of things that can lead to a great investment. Some of those can be the market, some of those can be the operator, some of those can be the economy. All of these different factors all play into a result. What have you seen yourself going and working with investors both during really good economic times and during challenging economic times?
Yeah, it's a really good point. A lot of times the things we learn are not helpful, and you'll see it with, investors or people that, maybe have a business and they just think that they're the biggest geniuses in the world, but it's just really kind of luck and timing and being fortunate. And we've had things that we've done well, in our business where we've been phenomenally successful. And we have other things I would say we've absolutely gotten destroyed. And that's happened personally. But on the other hand, it's all been learning. I mean, I share in my book a story of how I traded options. My net worth was about 200K and I lost $70,000 in one day, right? That is a very bad day. And what I learned is I'm not a great options trader, right? I'm not the guy to be working that formula and be doing that. And that was incredibly valuable. I know people that have lost over $1 million in a deal. And so somebody listening can be like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. I've never, but I mean, the amount is not as important as what are the lessons? What are the things that you learn? And so when you talk to people that have been doing this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or people like Buffett, it's all the lessons. It's all the things you learn. And sometimes you can learn the things you learn in times of success is that, I'm pretty great at this. I'm pretty awesome, whatever. Well, it could have been, you were in the right place at the right time. It could be that you simply, got lucky. And, a lot of times we don't learn in those situations. And so I think it's so important to just continue to remain humble and just always be looking to learn and be looking at your strategy and say, well, what happens if things don't go the way I want? What if things shift? What if they change? Because they can shift. We watched it in multifamily, right? It happened very, very quickly where, it went from being, this is a super, I mean, if you invested between 2010 and 2020, it was like, you're a genius. If you're just in there, maybe 2018, you're just a genius because you own, right? So everybody kind of got really cocky, thinking, oh, this thing can't go on. Well, we've watched rates rise. We've watched a lot of operators struggle, watched a lot of bridge debt situations kind of get in trouble. And so, it's so important to just stay humble and continue to learn and just be open to feedback from the market, from others, and just to keep learning and realize, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought and I just need to learn.
Well, I think that's a really, really valid point. And it's this idea that you have to take risk in order to create returns. But if the more that you learn, the more that you can understand how to reduce the risk and increase the return. And somebody who's been operating for nearly the past decade in real estate, since the first day that I got into the game of real estate, I was told that the market's going to crash the next year, the Fed's going to raise rates, and the whole game's going to change. And for 8, almost 9 years, nothing happened. And then something happened. And so this is part of the game of investing in real estate or investing in general, is that things happen that are outside of your control. But the more experience you have, the more knowledge that you have to react to those situations and to put guardrails in place to help prevent losses when those types of things do happen. So if you're an LP and you're out looking to make investments and you've got some money that you want to get placed, how would you recommend people think about reducing risk while increasing returns when they're going to go make an investment, whether it's in real estate, alternatives, business, anything in between?
So yeah, I think the question of reducing risk is really important. There's two things I want to say about this real quick. Is the first thing is your education, your network will really help you a lot as a passive investor. Getting around in the right rooms, you can ask people, "Hey, I'm thinking about investing with this. What do you think about this deal?" Finding people that have been doing it for 5, 10 years. I think for a lot of passive investors, they don't know any other passive investors, and that's the benefit of going to conferences. We have our event in Los Angeles each October, the Advanced Investing Summit, and things like that. Even local meetups, depending where you're at, if you're in a larger or mid-sized market. So that's one thing. And I would say, the education, the networking is really important. And then I think just continuing to look at a situation and say, what is the evaluated risk here? What is the 1 or 2 primary risks in a situation that in this project that could go wrong? And I think about it. I try to think, okay, this is what I think could not go well in this area. And then ask an operator when you're having those questions, those calls with operators, ask them, hey, what do you think is the biggest risk of this deal? And then I thought of one more. The third thing really is going back to my point about cash flowing deals. If I have a deal that cash flows very quickly, or has a predictability in the cash flow, I start to reduce my risk basis when I start getting paid. So if I have a deal that I know somewhat predictably or historically that, hey, I'm going to get half my money back in a couple of years, that's reducing my risk with every payment. Right. So I think that that's something to think about. A lot of people don't think about is, and again, we do some that are speculative, we do some that are higher, long-term and their development type of things. I think that's great. But there's also just, you can reduce your risk as well by having cash flow in your deals because money's back in your pocket. Now you can put it into something else.
Yeah, I think cash flow can solve a lot of issues. If there's a deal that has cash flow early and often, then obviously you can hedge against some of the challenges. But in order to get that cash flow, you're typically giving up greater back-end total return. And from my perspective, I think different investors need different things. A lot of people are very attracted to high back-end returns, and I think it can be a great way to multiply money really quickly. What is your perspective on it? I hear from you, cash flow is king, focus on cash flow. But if somebody's starting out with a lower net worth and they've got bigger goals, the only real option in order to multiply that money is either make a lot more money on the active side, doing your business, your job, whatever that is, or is to make strategic investments that can multiply greatly while allowing the portfolio to grow so that you can then turn that into cash flow at the right time. How do you think about it?
Yeah, there's actually two points I like to think about with that is that, when I had all these calls, with investors is either someone has time or they have money. And if you don't have money, then by default, you can make time or have time. So for me, I was working a full-time job. I didn't have a lot of money, honestly, even though I was making good money, I didn't have a lot of money. And so I chose to say, okay, to scale this, I want to figure out how to create value for other people in raising money. And so when we raised the first 15 million in the first couple of years, that dramatically changed my net worth, right? So there's ways people can grow much faster. So I think if you're willing to put in the work, now if somebody, but it just depends how people want to set up their life. Maybe in your business, you can create more money there and you can invest. But I would say either it's going to take a little more time to generate cash in your business or find a way to get in the business of investing, real estate, syndication, whatever that business is, and raise money or find deals, kind of do it that way. The other thought that you were mentioning is cash flow versus appreciation. I think, for retirement accounts, if you're years out, I think speculative deals can be great. I think it's great. I just think in general, when someone's looking at, hey, I've got to do this job, I'm in a certain situation, we don't know. Even if you're making great money, I mean, kind of what started this for me as well. I had a couple of physicians I worked with that made over $2 million each per year, but they were working 60, 80 hours a week, every week, and they couldn't take much time off. And I just thought, well, that doesn't look like freedom to me, right? I wanted to And for someone like that, could they say, okay, of the 2 million they're making, or somebody's making 200,000, whatever, can you take half of that and start investing it, right? And start putting money in to develop these skills about investing. And I think the cash flow, once it starts to increase over time, or you find investments that increase, and right now in real estate, it's a little harder. That's why we've transitioned to do a lot of business and other alternatives outside of real estate. But I do think cash flow is great. But there are situations where someone has a sizable net worth, and if I'm worth 3 or 4 or 5 million, and I don't really, I've got enough liquidity, I can do speculative stuff all day long. So we've got deals we've done where they're potential 10 to 100x type of deals, and when you ever have a deal like that, there's a decent chance that goes to zero, right? So there's things that every investment has its own risk and reward profile, and you've got to figure out based on your situation really what your goals are. So that's the challenge of a conversation like this. Is I'm not in everybody's shoes, and when I was an investment advisor for a few years, you could have specific conversations around it, but everybody's story is a little bit different.
Well, I think that is the challenge, is that when you're in education mode and you're out there learning, cash flow is a good safe option, because cash flow is what actually pays the bills. Once you get enough cash flow together, once you have enough recurring income, then you have that optionality of being able to decide, hey, maybe I don't actually want to go do X, Y, Z. I want to focus my time elsewhere. And you have the ability to make that decision, versus you can't eat appreciation until it exits. And so I have many deals that are very appreciation focused, and I'm doubling my money every 3 to 5 years, and it's phenomenal, and it's going to grow a lot of wealth. And I think it's a great strategy. And yet on the other side, moving more money into income allows me to have more optionality. And it's about understanding, from my perspective, where you're at and what your goals are. Because if somebody, for example, has $500,000 to their name, they probably should focus on trading time to get more money. Like you talked about, we had Andy Higgins on the podcast recently. He was talking about being in that advisor role for businesses where you can trade your skills to be able to create value for the company. It's a great option. But if you're somebody who's making $2-3 million a year, or $1 million a year, or you have $5 or $10 million in net worth, and all you need is a couple $100,000 a year to be financially free, you have the option with passive income to be able to flip that over and be able to, be in control of your life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, it comes down to giving you options and giving you the ability to make those decisions. This is the one thing that would really challenge me, and actually challenges me now, is that as an investment advisor, you would try to help get people into the right type of investments. I did this for a few years, and then I realized, man, I can't do this based on what I know, and I wanted to get in alternative assets. But even too, when I have all these calls with investors, you have these calls, your team has calls with investors, you can't tell them how much, hey, you should put this much in this deal, or this is the way you should allocate, because it depends on a lot of factors. And really what it comes down to is it depends on the own person's risk tolerance and their own desire for, if somebody's 30 years old and they're like, I want to put 100% of my net worth on some really risky stuff, they have the ability to do that, versus somebody else who's 30 could say, I don't want to lose anything I have. They might say it's all going in 100% in some really conservative thing, right? Or somebody who's 80 years old could say, I want to invest this way, I want to invest this way. And the thing is, when we take responsibility for our own investing, and that's what we're doing here, right? We're not delegating it to Wall Street. We're not delegating it to an investment advisor, because all of these people that I worked with, there's some people that have been critical. I had one guy, this is a really interesting story. I had a guy who invested with us about $500K in one investment and a couple $100K in another investment. And his investment advisor was like, I strongly encourage you not to work with Bronson Equity because of this and this and whatever. And I'm thinking like, well, and I just responded, it's like, either this guy is not wealthy or he didn't get wealthy using the methods that he's recommending. Right. And that's the challenge, is that like it's do what I say, but not what I do. And so they did a study, and they found that over 50% of large investment funds, excuse me, over $100 million a year, the fund manager had $0 invested. Right. So Wall Street has this incredible misalignment of interests where they will always get paid. And we have a whole chapter on this in the book about watch out for Wall Street. So I would just say, for you got to take responsibility for your own investments, your own education, and just be ready to try different things and figure out what your own risk allocation is and what it is you want to accomplish.
So kind of shifting gears here, you have a family. You're working in a W-2, you started kind of going down this path. Why do you do this? Why do you put yourself in this position to help others get invested, to take the risk the personal relationship risk of helping guide people down this path when there's no guarantee that the result is going to be what we're all hoping it's going to be. So why do you do what you do? What's really driving you?
Yeah. So, and just, full disclosure here, we've had a couple deals that have struggled. We've got a couple multifamily deals we've had capital call situations on, and it's been some really hard conversations, with people that, hey, we're not exactly sure how it's going to go. Are we going to, have a profit? Are we going to retain the capital? I mean, it's been really challenging. So I think it's important that in the industry, we talk about that. But I do think that, again, what I'm really passionate about is when someone is able to fire themselves, they can choose how they want to spend their time. And to me, it's interesting. Warren Buffett has that quote about making money while you sleep or else you work until you die. Well, he's 92 years old, I think, 93 years old. He's still working, right? So it's the idea of, and he actually describes it of tap dancing to work. Well, what if whatever your job is, as somebody listening, if you could tap dance to do what you want to do every day, to work with the people you want to work with, to travel how you want to work. I mean, last year I was able to travel 6 times internationally. I was able to finish writing my book, spend time with my daughter, take her camping, do the things that I want to do. And now I'm working hard. I feel like I'm really out there trying to do things, but I have the flexibility that I didn't have before. And this year in 2024, I've got a trip to go to Everest Base Camp in April, May. So those are kind of bucket list kind of things. A lot of people think, oh, I'll start living life when I'll have the life deferred plan when this and this and this happens, but they don't do anything to try to get themselves there. So that's why I think it's so critical. And we also don't know, like you or I or any of us, God forbid, we could be disabled. We could have an issue. I have a daughter. I have, there's responsibilities I have. So having some sort of something set up that I don't have to just simply do the time for money trade, or this business has to function and there's no way it can function unless I'm there. Those are things really to start thinking about, I think, for everybody, because freedom, in my opinion, is really freedom of time. And so if you have the ability to fire yourself, you should 100% figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful because in order to create that life, you have to take risks. You have to go out on a limb and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Regardless of how many times I get knocked down, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to keep going on this path, because I believe that in the long run, it's either going to set me up or my family or both to be able to live the kind of life that we all want to live, and to not be stuck in fear because of the unknown, but instead to head into the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to, what do you want your life to be about? And to me, it comes down, I know you're a huge Tony Robbins and personal development guy as well. And just the idea of like, why are we here? What are we doing here? And it reminds me of this story about this boy who's walking along the shore, and he picks up these starfishes and throws them back in the ocean because he sees that they're going to die because they've kind of been washed out to shore. And this old man comes along and says, what are you doing? He's like, there's thousands of them out. What do you think you're going to make a difference? And he picks up a starfish, looks at it, and says, he throws it in the water and says, well, it made a difference for that one. Right. So that's what we're doing, man. I'm getting all fired up here, but just making a difference for people. So that's what we're doing. That's what you're doing. And by our educating people, we can get them out of a system like the Matrix. I guess kind of a severe thing to say, but it's like a lot of people are just stuck in a job they don't like, doing something they don't necessarily want to do, or they don't know how to get out of it. Even if you are very prosperous, how do you get out of that to where you actually can experience life on your terms? And I think that's the thing and really do what you're here to do. I think that's the biggest, most powerful thing that I've found.
Well, it makes me a little emotional thinking about it, because at the end of the day, the saddest thing is that most people don't really make a change until they go through until they're forced to, because they go through some kind of really difficult time, the loss of a loved one, a divorce, being fired from a job, essentially being forced into that direction. And yet we have the option to get ahead of it. We don't have to lose somebody really close to us in order to go out and do the hard thing, if we can connect to what that's really going to do for us. And I think being the example, and you're a great example, is a super important, valuable role to be able to show other people that it's possible.
100%. And, there's another quote. I'm not kind of a quote and a book guy, but there's that quote about, I think it's attributed to Nelson Mandela, but just the idea, when we let our light shine, it allows others, it gives them permission. Right. And so as for you going after your dreams, me going after my dreams, individuals doing the things creating those things in their life that we're here to do, and us living out our passion. There's even like a faith quote of, the glory of God is man most fully alive, right? Like when someone's fully alive, you can see it. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their passion that they're just taking the bull by the horns, and they're living courageously without fear, and they're a powerful force, right? And that's the kind of person that I want to be. That's what I want everyone to discover for themselves, that, hey, I am a powerful person. I can create I'm not a victim here. I'm not a victim. I can create a new vision for my life. And that's, I know why you do what you do, and why I do what I do. And I love that you talk about mindset, because that's like 90% of it right there, is just getting the right mindset and being able to change for the situation that you have. So my hope is people really get set free and get a vision for their life that's much bigger than what they had before.
Yeah. And I mean, the truth is, it's the work that we're talking about, Bronson, can truly change people's lives. Yet it's a very difficult road to be on, because we're talking about money, and money is connected to capitalism. And capitalism is one of the most powerful tools out there. Yet when what we're talking about is truly making an impact. And I'll be honest, when I got started in the business, in business in general, I wasn't trying to make an impact for others. I was trying to get myself out of broke, fear, pain, all of those negative things that I grew up with that drove me. And then I had a life-changing experience, the loss of a loved one. And over the past 4 years, I've been on this journey. And despite having the best of intentions, it's still a challenging road. And so I just encourage anyone who's listening, who this resonates with, to keep moving forward, because if you're doing things for the right reason and you get connected to that driving purpose, it's not something that you decide, it's something that is decided for you, that you discover. It can really open up a whole new way of living, even though there's challenges along the path.
Yeah, there's a great book. The author Hal Elrod wrote The Miracle Morning, and another one of his books is called The Miracle Equation. And it basically, I might get this slightly wrong, but he has the idea that once you have incredible determination, you decide, this is where I want to go, and this is a cause that's it's worth everything. It's worth me giving all of my energy, basically living and dying for, in the sense, and they say, well, that's extreme. It's like, well, your purpose is that important. Figuring out what you're here to do, going after that purpose. Then he says you combine that kind of goal or that focus with unwavering faith that, no matter how long it takes, right? If you knew it was going to take a month and you say, oh, I'm just going to try for a month, whatever. Well, what if it takes you 10 years? What if it takes you longer? Would you be that committed? Is that goal that important? And then when you make that decision, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, how hard it is, whatever the obstacle is, because you've already decided, hey, this is worth me giving my life for. And so I know it's kind of settled with that book. The Miracle Equation was really powerful, just to learn, hey, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. If we get this done and we get to our goals and we raise $1 billion, and we're some huge company, or we're able to, one of my big whys is ending modern day human slavery in the world, which is a huge, big, higher, audacious goal. If that happens or not, those are still causes that I want to give my life towards. And I'm going to keep taking action of those things until they happen. Right. And so I think that's really powerful. And the guy, Tony Robbins, talks about, you're basically, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. So once you make that decision that, hey, I'm going to get after my purpose, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to do whatever the thing is that you feel you're here to do or you want to do, things start to change. And I know you've experienced that as well. Incredible success in your life, Steven, how you've just accomplished all these amazing things. And I hope that for all your listeners as well.
Yeah. And to be honest, I've accomplished a lot of amazing things, but I still have major moments of pain and challenge, trying to figure out what is the best direction to go and how to get there and how to have the biggest impact and how to make sure the team is paid for and that they can get to their goals and that the investors and all of these things. And so despite success, there is still challenges. And so 100%. It's important to remember that, because that if you know and recognize that it's going to happen and that it's part of the journey, then you'll be able to continue moving forward. So I know we've got a hard stop here. So before my last question, why don't you share with the audience where they can get a copy of your book or where they can follow you for more knowledge and wisdom?
Awesome, Steven. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate you having me on the show. You can check out my website at bronsonequity.com. We've got the first chapter of the book there. You can actually download for free. You can go to Amazon and buy the book. And you can also learn about our stuff on all the social medias. You can just search Bronson Hill and find me there. But thanks for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great having you. And I know one of the key things of this conversation has been about, how do you put yourself in a position to create a better life? And so
Mhm.
what's your advice for all the people who are listening, who are on the path towards creating their ultimate dream life, yet they know what they need to do, but they're not taking action towards doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like for me, I went to real estate meetups for 6 years, and I really didn't take any additional action. I just kind of kept learning, which learning is good. But again, if I were going to have learning or action, I would just take action. So what really changed for me is when I made a decision, when I said, you know what, in 3 years, I want to be out of my job. And I had a good job. And my family was like, you're crazy. Why would you want to leave your job? Right? You have this great job and you're working 20, 30 hours a week. But I wanted to be able to create something that was different. It was my own. So I think anybody listening and it's just, watching this or listening to this is just figure out what you want and then make the decision like, hey, I'm going to do this, or this is this amount of time. And then your subconscious, once you make that decision, will start to go to work and help you figure out how to get there. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Make a decision and then start taking action toward that goal every day, just every day, do something.
Hey, well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. And thanks so much for joining us, Bronson. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Steven.
Thanks for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to watch another, here's one up top. And here's another great video right down below.